Party time.
Very special to you, this
Party
H-O-M, straight out of Canada, coming up to you with the first parties in the
Party
Northern Hemisphere. You said it.
Party time.
You know, it always amazes me how the internet will spawn phenomena that people think are new and deserving of a cool name, as well as several filler articles in magazines and newspapers, when really they've been around for a long time under a different name. Take flash mobs, for example. Sure, they use the internet to get a whole bunch of people to show up in the same place to do the same thing at the same time, like have a water gun fight or fill out their taxes in unison, but that base has been covered by mass hysteria for centuries. Yes, in this week's episode, I'm going to do my part to help remind people that the world existed before the internet by covering a variety of mass hysterias that you too can get all up in your areas. The most famous example comes from 1938 when Orson Welles did his broadcast of War of the Worlds that convinced millions of people Martians really were invading. Now, most people don't really have the option to do this, as most people don't have access to millions of listeners to convince of ridiculous falsehoods. But what is an option for everyone is dancing. From the 14th through the 18th centuries, there were several recorded incidents of thousands of medieval peasants ending up dancing like a maniac. A maniac on the floor, dancing like they'd never danced before. And often like they'd never dance again, since this mania frequently proved to be fatal. Given the era in which these people were afflicted with this particular dance fever, it was usually assumed that they were possessed by devils. Modern scientists figure it probably came as a result of people eating bread laced with a hallucinogenic fungus called ergot. Either way, you've got yourself a nice little flash mob that anybody with some sweet dance moves and maybe some fungus could get started. What could be trickier to duplicate would be an outbreak of mass hysteria that happened a little over 10 years ago in eastern Java, wherein most of the population became convinced they were in danger of attack by ninja sorcerers. How do you spot a ninja sorcerer? Well, one anti-ninja sorcerer vigilante who was interviewed by the New York Times had this to say. "They look like crazy men," he said, "and we also look to see if they have any holy writing on them, because that would mean that they practice black magic." It's also considered proof that you're a ninja sorcerer if you use black magic, or if you try to run away when you are approached by a group of angry anti-ninja sorcerer vigilantes who are set on beheading you. At the time, at least 150 ninja sorcerers were killed by the vigilante mobs, and a lot of cats too, since the vigilantes believed that ninja sorcerers could transform into cats to escape their particular brand of street justice. With all this lynching going on, it wasn't uncommon for people to kill folk they didn't like, claiming that they were ninja sorcerers. Does this sound familiar to anybody? But that's not even the craziest mass hysteria you could try and get going over Twitter. You could try and convince thousands of men that other men are sneaking into their houses and stealing their penises. Oh yes, genital retraction syndrome is very real, and there have been many large outbreaks in both Southeast Asia, where it's known as Koro, and in Africa. Nobody is sure exactly how they get started, but soon enough, a domino effect begins where more and more men become convinced that their penises are withering away or retracting into their bodies. It almost goes without saying that this is not a recipe for calm and rational thinking. Usually the only injuries that come from penis panics are when the sufferers, flash mobbers, try to prevent the theft of their penises using things like shoestrings, fishing line, needles, and the like. Let's also not forget the deaths which result from vigilante violence when large mobs of men become convinced that they're being affected by, say, penis-melting combs and handshakes, as was the case just 6 years ago in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. That particular panic was set off by a mixture of text messages and the power of suggestion. I hope I've given you all some more interesting ideas for your flash mobs, and given some hope to those of you who wish to organize them without using Facebook or the like. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some text messages to send.
Oh, say, a text message from Oliver, and oh my. Just when a man thinks he can trust his comb, this happens.
But that's not even the craziest mass hysteria that you could try and get started over Twitter. You could always attempt to convince thousands of men that penises are sneaking into their ass. What the fuck?